Okay, 1 second. And now clerking isn't just minutes anymore. It's like video production.
You
Okay,
need to have multi
that's right.
templates.
We're live.
We're live?
Yes.
Okay.
Clerking isn't just minutes anymore. It's like video production. There we go. I should be.
Multi.
One of these mics needs to be muted.
We're live? Okay. I think this is what they call day show. Yeah, that's the police go. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Again. Okay.
Now we're ready? Okay. All right, well, this is Chip Collins, and as the chair, I want to call the meeting of the Sandy Springs Development Authority to order for Thursday, January 9th, 2025. And will the secretary please call the roll?
Good morning again, everyone. As I call the roll, please confirm your attendance. Chip Collins.
Present.
Andy Bauman.
Here.
Dr. Battle.
Present.
Hardy Dorsey.
Present.
And Joe Houseman. Absent. Study Parks.
Here.
Ed Ukano. Absent. We have a quorum.
All right, the agenda has been circulated. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of the meeting agenda for our Development Authority meeting Thursday, January 9, 2025. Second.
All right, we have a motion for approval of the agenda by Mr. Bauman, seconded by Mr. Park. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We've been handed meetings from the May 9th, 2024 meeting, which was our last meeting. Is there a motion to approve those meeting minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move adoption of the meeting minutes of this Development Authority May 9th, 2024.
Second. Okay, we've got a motion to approve the meeting minutes for May 9th, 2024 by Mr. Bowman, seconded by Mr. Dorsey. Favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Moving on to new business. We've already introduced her. Oh, we have two new staff members, so we're not going to let Chris slide. We've introduced them, but let's introduce them quickly for the record. We have Madison Melton, who is, what's the title?
Economic Development Specialist.
Economic Development Specialist, graduate of the prettiest village on the plains, Auburn. And then we have Chris Burnett, who, what's your title now?
Development Director.
All right. And Chris
Not
is
a graduate of that.
not a graduate. He does wear Georgia Bulldog clothes. I know that. So we're happy to have Madison and Chris both helping the city and also helping this authority. Let's see. We have got, I don't know that it's been circulated, the schedule of meetings that's been circulated, Rocky?
I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I can give you those dates.
Okay.
Our next scheduled meeting is the morning of April the 10th. 10th.
Oh,
Yeah, 10th. Then following that, it would be July 10th. And the final meeting of the year is October 9th. All of those are Thursday mornings. I know historically, the authority has met at 8:30 a.m. I did hear some discussion, Mr. Chairman, that you all might want to consider changing that time. I'll leave that up to you.
I have no desire to change that time, especially if it's moving earlier.
Oh, okay.
I like 8:30 meetings. I hope everybody else is okay with that. It's hard enough to get me here at 8:30. But I try to run an efficient meeting, so I promise to always get you out of here by 9:30.
Do we need to approve that schedule right now?
Yes.
We do need to approve the
Mr.
schedule.
Chair.
Okay, so we've got 3 meetings scheduled, and we also have the authority to, set any ad hoc meeting that's needed or cancel any meeting. So,
Mr.
we have a
Chair.
motion on this?
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the meeting schedule as articulated by Mr. Burnett, April 10, July 10, October 9, all at 8:30 a.m.
Do I have a motion?
Yeah, that was.
Oh, that was your motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, I've got a motion by Mr. Baumann and seconded by Ms. Battle of the stated schedule of meetings for 2025. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the next thing we have to do is elect officers for the authority. I think we typically elect chair and vice chair, and then the secretary stays Natifa, right? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I mean, we don't need to vote on you, is that right? That's sort of automatic.
You guys, it's up to you guys.
Well, I'm fine with leaving her automatic. So we'll go with chair and vice chair. I guess for the record, we'll go ahead and confirm Tifa, but let's go with chair first. Do I have a nomination for chair?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Bell.
I nominate the incumbent chair, Mr. W. Chip Collins,
Okay.
to be chair of this authority.
All right. Are there any other nominations for chair? Okay, there's one nomination, Chip Collins. All in favor, so show of hands to confirm that vote. All right,
Acclamation.
acclamation. All right. The vice chair, current vice chair is Andy Baumann. Do I have a nomination for vice chair for 2025?
I nominate Andy Bowman for vice chair. I support that as well.
Okay, Mr. Park nominates Andy Baumann. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, that's all in favor of Andy Baumann, raise your hand.
Aye.
All right, Andy Baumann is the vice chair for 2025. And then our secretary, our current secretary is Natifa Cunningham.
Yes, sir.
And do we have a nomination for Natifa? Anybody nominate Natifa to remain secretary?
Oh, I nominate Natifa.
Okay, any other nominations for secretary? All right, all in favor of Natifa remaining as secretary?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Natifa Cunningham is the secretary for 2025, and we have no more, I don't think we have a treasurer, right? Okay, all right, let's see. Next, we're going to review our Development Authority mission statement and guidelines. Chris, is that you?
That is.
All right.
Raquel, I sent that to you all a little bit earlier this week. Have you got that ready to queue up?
I do.
I don't want to read it per se, but there are a couple of things we want to highlight. You all know this intuitively from the work you've already done, but just to sort of reinforce what our objectives are. Raquel, give you just a moment to pull that up before we start.
Okay.
So again, much of this you all already know, but just to reinforce our purpose here. In essence, the Development Authority has the authority and the power to finance by loan, grant, or lease, or other financial instruments, projects that are considered for the public good of Sandy Springs. We have the authority to execute contracts and agreements related thereto, and the authority to purchase, lease, and sell property, if that is what the authority so deems is part of the serving the public good. And then finally, issuing revenue bonds and notes related thereto. The mission statement you'll see there, our primary mission obviously is to support Sandy Springs sponsored projects, including both new development and redevelopment and economic development goals, whether that's related to the commercial sector, educational institutions, or nonprofit organizations. We have the authority to issue taxable and tax exempt bond financing opportunities and other incentives that are covered under the Georgia Development Authority laws. I know you all, those who've been on the board for a while know we do have tax abatements and bonds already in place on certain projects. It's certainly our goal going forward to use all of these tools in our toolbox to continue to stimulate the growth of economic development and real estate redevelopment in the city of Sandy Springs. Just as a quick reminder on page 2, Rocky, there is a schedule of what historically our abatement schedules have been. These are actually typically set by Fulton County. And I don't believe, Dan Lee has advised, I don't believe we step outside of what's been established by Fulton County in terms of being more aggressive on our abatement program than the county allows. But in the bonds that we've done in the past, or the abatements we've done, it starts at 50% of the taxable value, a reduction 50% of the taxable value in year 1, increasing by 5% per year. So by the time we get to the 11th year, the property is back to 100% of its value for taxing purposes. And again, we have, I'm not sure the total number of bond transactions we have on the Development Authority's books at this point. But if you all are interested, that could be some information that I bring for our next meeting. You'll see below there, as far as things that the dollars can be used for, amenities, again, for the public good to enjoy as part of the project itself. For example, we could have a requirement as part of our approval of financial instruments that there's a fee simple housing component as part of a project if we deem that that's important to us as part of the project. And we could have, a portion of the annual tax savings could go into a fund that supports other city projects and support goals in the surrounding areas of the development that's occurring. So there is a application process, and we're very hopeful that we'll have some developers that execute some applications and ask us to hear their cases in the upcoming year. We currently have none in the queue at this time, but certainly hopeful that, and we're having some very preliminary conversations about possible opportunities for the Development Authority to consider this year. And Mr. Chairman, that's all I have in terms of updating our mission and authority's objectives.
Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely do you think it is that you get a project for us this year?
Cutting to the chase.
Cutting to the chase.
Less than 5.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So much of what we are asked about from the development community is multifamily. And Councilman Bellman and I were talking earlier about in 2025, there's going to be, we call it a cleansing of bank balance sheets, where you get a lot of projects that get completed and get moved into permanent financing. And that's going to free up the capacity of banks to finance projects. And I think multifamily will be one of those projects that becomes supportable again from a debt equity perspective. So I do think we'll see, most of what we'll see will probably be multifamily with a retail component. And Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've historically done tax abatements on multifamily, have we?
There's retail on the ground floor or in the development.
Not purely
Are you,
Yeah, so that was my thought is that because of that, because I see multifamily as the principal driver of things that we'll look at in the development department. And if we don't do abatements, then we may not see much, if any, requests.
so Chris, Mr. Chairman, ask you a question? Yes. Thank you. Chris, so that's sort of more traditional new construction, I think is what you're considering there. I know that the council, I don't want to step on the council's, your plans for the retreat, but it's my prerogative to talk about something which we've talked about publicly anyway. Councilwoman Millar has talked about it and others have as well, myself included, have talked about facade improvements. I'll give you an example of one that was done without our assistance, but across the street from here, Springs Landing did a really, really nice, significant facade improvement. And it'd be nice to, everybody has their taste and style, but it was significant, I think to the tune of a few $1 million, and I'm grateful to them that they did that. That's Riverwood Properties, and I know them very well. So facade improvements, also in the area of redevelopment, where we could see significant upgrades to properties that could potentially come before us. I love meeting with Sonny and Artie and Chip, but I hope that we are meeting with some business this year. This is a rhetorical observation that, that we're not Maytag, we're a little busier, because I think the city needs it. So, of course, that's not on us. Ours is just to react, but hoping that we, hope springs eternal. It's a new year. Hopefully we'll have a few things on the plate that we can do that are not just, waiting for new multifamily.
And Andy, one of the things we'll segue to at the appropriate time is the discussion of the goals and initiatives, and it will touch to some degree on the facade grant, potential facade grants and other financing opportunities related to that, especially on the redevelopment side.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, well, if that's all you've got, then you can go ahead and move into goals and initiatives.
Okay.
The mission statement and Phil, excuse me, economic development, gonna put efforts to it, to bringing more Fortune 500, the large corporation headquarters, here like we already have Mercedes Benz and UPS and all this, so we pretty much are ready to invite them over. So are we putting any efforts on that?
Sonny, we absolutely are. If some of you may not be aware that we did sign an incentive agreement recently. Andy's council approved this for a company, Automotive Group. They own a number of dealerships nationally. Nally being their big flag here in Atlanta. They own 155 dealerships around the country. Do $15 billion a year in annual revenue. They're moving their headquarters into what was the Newell Rubbermaid building on Peachtree Dunwoody. That was a big win for the city because we kept Newell. We're able to move them into the King and Queen building, and they're adding additional footage and additional employees. And then back another Asbury's number 281 on Fortune 500 list. And our incentive package in that case totaled about 256,000, I believe it was. And that was primarily business and occupational tax waivers. And they're not really adding any square footage. They're simply doing renovations to the building that they're buying. And I was concerned, you're always worried until the deal closes, whether it's actually going to happen. It has closed now. They have bought the building. So they've made the commitment to move forward with the headquarters. So they'll start their building renovations probably in the next 60 days or so, with the goal of being in the building by the summer. And we'll execute our incentive agreement with them. So that was a great story of where we kept a major company in Newell and backfilled with a major company in Asbury. And those sorts of wins honestly don't come along frequently because to move a corporate headquarters entails a tremendous amount of effort. And even although Asbury is already in Atlanta, they're headquartered over in the Duluth market. it can be a challenge because they've got 350 employees they'll be bringing to Sandy Springs. Almost all of those employees don't live in Sandy Springs, so you're having to get those employees to commit to make a longer drive, to change their commute patterns. If they've got children in school, they've got to work around all those issues. And so, companies do not take those decisions lightly. But I was reading an article this past week that predicts that there will be an acceleration in corporate headquarters relocations in 25 and beyond. And it cited a number of different reasons, but there continues to be a major move towards the Southeast and the Southwest, particularly in the states of the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, and Texas, the Sun Belt. And the expectation is that we will see more opportunities for corporate relocation on the horizon.
How that happen in Masbury situation? Did they come to us or we approach them?
So as is almost always the case, a company makes a decision to consider headquarters options. They go hire a firm to help them. One of the major real estate firms, a Jones Lang LaSalle or a CBRE, one of the major national firms, particularly if they're coming from out of state and they may not have connections in the Atlanta market. They'll pick a firm and they'll say, okay, go bring us 3 market alternatives or 5 market alternatives. And here are the criteria of what we're looking for. And then that real estate firm will go out, hone the market, each of the marketplaces that they've told them to look at, and then go back to the company with options. At that point, typically, for example, once Metro Atlanta is in the running, once we've been identified as a market of interest, then either representatives of the company or traditionally the real estate firm will reach out to the Georgia Chamber of Commerce or the Georgia Department of Economic Development or the Metro Atlanta Chamber. And then we'll start to get phone calls from those organizations. We did recently receive a phone call from the Metro Atlanta Chamber about a possible reload. It's very, very early, but they said, we just want to let you know there is some interest in Sandy Springs and some other Atlanta markets. And they were asking about our incentive programs and tax abatement opportunities and things like that, which we went through with them on the phone call. So we know we're at least in consideration, but we don't know who the company is. It's all kept very quiet. It's typically under a code name project. And so you really don't know until you get deeper into the negotiations or discussions who the actual company is. And so for us as an organization, or as a city, to go out and go call on, ABC company and currently headquartered in New York, Sandy Springs, given our size, we probably wouldn't do that directly, but we would rely on our statewide economic development partners to make sure we're in front of them, to know all that we have to offer them and what makes this market great, so that when they're asked by the real estate company that's representing this corporation, they'll say, well, you really need to think about Sandy Springs. They've got a lot of things going on. So part of my job and Madison's job is to make sure we're marketing our city to the decision makers that are helping these companies decide where they want to move their offices or open new locations.
For my own education purpose, why should corporations pick Sandy Spring compared to Dunwoody?
Excellent question. And sometimes they do pick Dunwoody. And sometimes they pick Brookhaven. AIG just signed a significant lease in Brookhaven to go into an office building over there. As an example, DeKalb County does have a potentially more lucrative tax abatement program than Fulton County does. In fact, Madison's doing some work on that now. She'll talk about that in a few minutes. We're doing some research and basically doing some comparisons of our incentive programs to some of the other major markets we compete against, like Dunwoody and Brookhaven and others. But it could be as simple as not just the tax abatement piece. It could be as simple as the particular office building that is most of interest to them happens to be in Dunwoody or Brookhaven. It may be that the lease rates are more attractive in a particular building. It may be that a company, for example, we got one company we've spoken with, and they need a minimum of 200,000 contiguous square feet. Well, that's not always easy to find in existing office buildings that have tenants already in place, is to have one building that can accommodate 200,000 square feet. In many cases, you have to go build that building, but it's this real estate company's job to go find them a building that can deliver them 200,000 square feet of contiguous space. We may not have that in Sandy Springs, or it may not be in a building that is of interest to them. We've got some older, tired buildings that Class B and C office buildings that some of these major companies are just not interested in going into. They much prefer Class A or at least A- space. That's why we've seen such robust leasing activity in the King and Queen building. They would arguably be our two best buildings from a quality perspective. And, their vacancy rate is very low now because of leases they've signed with companies like Newell. They're investing a lot of money into their tenant finish, and they're doing a nice job there. LA Fit, Lifetime has come in and bought the fitness club there at Concourse and is doing a major redo of that. And that's a fantastic amenity for the office tenants in the Concourse development. And not all of our office building owners have those kinds of financial resources to invest to that level in their buildings. So there are just many factors that go into why someone might choose Sandy Springs or Dunwoody. Access to MARTA is key, and both cities offer that. Public safety is key. And in fact, when we met with Newell's chairman, he said one of the most important things they kept coming back to was public safety. Because our police and fire do such an outstanding job, their employees feel safety. That's an important part of the economic development process.
Housing and schools.
Housing, schools, quality of life, green space. I mean, all the things that make up the Sandy Springs package. And Dunwoody has those things too, as does Brookhaven, and as do some of the other markets we compete with. We just have to do a good job of selling them in Sandy Springs.
All right.
Great.
I have another question about quite a bit of balance, a lot of development going on. Has there been any consideration for some sort of housing or affordable housing for seniors?
So there are, in our strategic plan, there is a good bit of discussion about housing. And I think one of the things at the retreat, Kristen, I think we need to decide if we're going to have a housing component, or let me rephrase that, mayor and council need to decide if they want to have a housing component discussion. Because much of the housing that has been built, mostly multifamily, is definitely at a high price point. And it's not going to check the box of affordable housing when you look at 80% AMI, for example. And then we've got to make a decision, mayor and council again, make a decision, and they'll direct staff on if they want us to pursue a policy of affordable housing, what could that look like? For example, we could offer financial incentives in the multifamily development space for a certain number of affordable housing units to be included in the development plan. That's a lever that we could pull if we're directed to do so by mayor and council. But to date, and I've only been here since August, Kristen, correct me if you want to weigh in on this.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So as Chris said, we have a housing component as a part of our next 10 comprehensive plan. So you can go look at that to kind of get a feel for what the city's thoughts are on this. But we do have an incentive that no one is taking advantage of, but we do offer it for some level of affordability within the development. Thus far, our approach has been carrot and not stick. So we don't have any requirements necessarily for affordable housing within a development, but both our incentive policy and development code offer different kinds of incentives for it. For instance, one of the sort of bonus structures that we've set up within the development code would offer additional height in some areas in exchange for housing. So we do have a few tools already in our toolkit.
Artie, that's such a great question because first of all, it's housing affordability and availability. tied together. But the city's dealing with a potential closure of Spalding Drive Elementary School, which like, well, how does that relate to seniors? Well, it really does. I mean, we're seeing a dropping population of households with school-age children. That's what it's leading to. And I'm actually going to be asking for data, but we have, I'm quite certain, thousands of homes of empty nesters that would like to downsize and remain in Sandy Springs. Those thousands of homes have probably 3 times as many bedrooms that are empty. So we're literally looking at thousands and thousands of empty bedrooms in Sandy Springs that we need to find a way to be filled to support our whole ecosystem of schools, retail, workforce. But for that, without building a single new house, for those people necessarily, we need the community, society, the city needs to find places for people to go, and they want to stay in Sandy Springs. And that is not only a function of affordability, it's a function of availability. And so those are some things we're going to be talking about at the retreat. Because when we can start moving those pieces around, we can start filling. You can create housing by finding housing for seniors. All of a sudden that can free up housing for the young families we need to attract. It's a great question.
Well, one thing we may want to consider is, while we have traditionally stayed away from supporting purely multifamily residential projects, we might want to consider, if we can back it into our statutory mission, considering incentives for senior housing, both affordable and high end. I mean, frankly, because a lot of the people Andy you're talking about are people that don't want to leave their neighborhoods that have got, nice, expensive houses here. And I know, I mean, because my mother's of that age, she has so many friends that wind up, they don't want to go, but they wind up going to Lynbrook and Paquette. And why don't we have a Lynbrook-like thing in Sandy Springs? Maybe we do, but I don't know about it. I tried to get one built over on Hammond Drive a few years ago, and they didn't want that. But I think there is an opportunity here, and we might be one of the so that might be something we want to talk about at a later meeting, and Chris can put his thank you cap on. Okay, so Chris, is there anything on goals and initiatives that we haven't said already?
Yeah, well, Rocky, do you have that PowerPoint? Here we go. I'm going to be very high level because these are, I think that, and we're always sensitive to make sure mayor and council know what we're talking about as well. And so these are items we'll talk about after retreat, but I believe mayor and council are already aware of most or all of the things that we're considering for our goals for the coming year. And they're really broken into 2 parts. Part of it is supporting our business growth, whether it's keeping a company here so that they don't leave Sandy Springs, or bringing new companies into the marketplace. So one of the things we are embarking on now is what's called a perimeter. It's called our perimeter area small area plan. We're working with a firm called Roadside in Harwell, and this is a plan that will identify opportunities for sites in the perimeter office district. And that could be converting office buildings to residential, or repurposing existing older buildings. Also looking at path systems, green space, creative activation of restaurants or container restaurants, or maybe we emulate something in the Beltline area. But it's trying to create more of a, I hate to use the word cool factor, but a younger workforce wants things in their work experience that we perhaps don't offer in the perimeter market like they have in Midtown or on the Beltline or now in West Midtown. And not saying that we'll ever be those markets, because they're certainly different in Sandy Springs, but there's some things they're doing that I would love to see us do in the perimeter market, because I do think, and I always kind of look at the young person from the lens of my children. who two of them live in Ansley Park, and they work in town. And they would never think about coming to Sandy Springs at this point, because they love Piedmont Park and the Beltline. But as they get married and have children, I want to make sure that they keep the community like Sandy Springs at the top of their list of communities they want to move to. And if we can create some opportunities for them to come and experience our market as young single people, then that's going to plant the seed for them to ultimately move here and raise their kids here and help rebuild the population in our school system. And so we're hopeful that our perimeter small area plan will help us to identify those opportunities. Secondly, energizing local businesses. This is a business-to-business social media outreach program. We've done this at times over the years, but I think Madison, we were looking at what was our last newsletter was it 23? I think it was. So we are going to be doing many more social media pushes, newsletters, really touting and promoting Sandy Springs businesses, profiling local companies of all sizes, large, medium, and small, and just doing much more in the way of business outreach, including educational classes for entrepreneurs. We have our first of those on Monday. We're co-sponsoring an event with the University of Georgia Small Business Development Center. It's a 2-hour seminar calling Accessing Capital in a Challenging Market. And it's targeted specifically at small companies that want to learn how to unlock access to debt and capital. And we've already got close to 60 people signed up for that. And we'd love to get to 75 or more for that event. And it's totally free. We're offering it to the public for free. And actually, we're doing it through a program that's offered through UGA. And so they're coming and providing a professor to do the speaking for us. So that's one of the first of many of these business outreach programs that we want to do this year and beyond. Also, we're looking at training and mentoring programs, almost like a surrogate board of directors. We have so much talent in Sandy Springs, successful business people who have reached that point in their life where they want to pay it forward to the next generation. And so tapping into that talent and creating mentoring opportunities is part of our small business focus. And this goes under the umbrella of the Sandy Springs Business Council, which is a division of the newly renamed chamber, the Greater Perimeter Chamber of Commerce, which is a merger of Dunwoody and Sandy Springs. And to make sure we do not lose focus on Sandy Springs, the chamber is forming 2 business councils, Sandy Springs Business Council and the Dunwoody Business Council. And so we'll have leadership in both communities that will focus on our businesses in our downtown areas, or Powers Ferry or the North End, to make sure that we, although the chamber is merged into a larger regional organization, we just cannot afford to lose sight of taking care of our own community. And then looking at expanding our connectivity, especially to our largest employers, getting more of our leadership out in front of our big companies, and making sure that we're understanding what their needs are, what their employees want, what they want to, because the last thing we want is to pick up the newspaper and find out that we're losing a company that's moving 1,000 employees to another market. We want to be proactive in doing everything we can to be out in front of these potential moves and stop them before they ever occur. And so part of that's is just, there's a lot of face time with the decision makers, especially in the parent-based employers.
I have a question about Cox Communications, headquartered here for quite a while. And I know some people there who are saying that they're moving their headquarters to the city. Are considering it?
We are not aware of that.
Okay.
I heard that too. I think they did move some.
I thought they did.
They
I think-
consolidated into Sandy Springs from their Brookhaven office.
Yeah, but they may have, I think they moved, well, I think they moved their newspaper business in town.
I think that's what
I think that's what
actually
they did.
observed.
AJC,
Yes.
which is in Midtown.
Yeah, I think they moved
That's it.
their newspaper business in
Yeah.
town.
But no significant impact on the city here.
Well,
If that's
I
all,
think
well, the newspaper business.
Mike Lukovich maybe
Yeah.
moving, but he works from home mostly anyway, so in Sandy Springs, incidentally. No, that's a good question. My recollection.
I think that's what that is, yeah.
So we had a roundtable meeting that was put together by the Perimeter CID, and 15 of the region's largest employers were there in that meeting, and including Cox. And we talked a good bit about return to office. And Cox has said they're back in the office in Sandy Springs 3 days a week now. And then Kristen and I had a phone call with the Cox representative a few weeks ago, and we've certainly not gotten any indication that they would be moving headquarters out of the city. And then finally, we're working on this now, hopefully to roll this out to mayor and council soon, is to have a website that is specific to economic development for Sandy Springs called Select Sandy Springs. And we'll roll this out probably late this month, early February to mayor and council, and then we'll roll it out to you all at the next development.
Yeah, and we still have City Center Phase 2 that we have to try to do. We've been sitting on that for quite a long time. That's the parcels of land across the street.
Guess that's one more slide.
Yeah.
What's on the next slide? Oh, sorry.
All right, with that, there's no questions
I'm
on
sorry.
this first slide. Oh, there we go. Andy, you're a savant.
I'm just thinking, that's like the biggest thing.
Yeah, so City Springs 2.0, continues to be in various stages of design and discussion. And I believe we've got a meeting on Monday, is that correct? Yeah. No, not decided, okay. So it's as Andy said, we own what, 5.5 acres of land south of here going down towards Old Kroger. And so mayor and council need to make decisions on what is the best plan for that property and what's the timing of that going to be. And those are all still in the contemplation phase, I guess is a good way to put it. So still more to go on that, but it's definitely a front burner item for in terms of discussion. Because it will be transformative ultimately when it is delivered, very much like City Springs Phase 1 was transformed. I'm going to ask Madison to speak on, I'll talk about the second bullet point first. To Andy's point earlier about addressing aging buildings, and a project we're working on this year will be citywide design guidelines. And that's evaluating, I'm not sure we want to make a, what's the village over on the east side of town? Everything looks, we're not like a Helen, Georgia, where it all looks very, not sure we're going to want to go to the extent of having a village concept where all the buildings look the same. In fact, I'd say we're probably not going to go to that extent. But we do want to have some design guidelines in place so that we can provide direction to the owners of our older buildings on what we would like to see in terms of improving those buildings. And then the second component of that is how we can help in improving those buildings. And we're looking at some pilot programs. Again, we've not spoken, some members I think are aware of this, but we'll do it in the retreat format. We're talking about possibly doing a pilot program in 2025 related to building improvements in an area that's important to the city, whether it's City Springs or the North End in particular. And using this as a way of creating towards improving old buildings. There are different things you can do. You can do a pure grant program where you make grants to the building owner. We as the city have to supervise that the money that's being invested is going back into the buildings, much like a construction lender would. But grants is an option. You can do a discounted loan program. The state already has some programs like that. But unfortunately, the state's program is earmarked only for owner-occupied buildings. We have a number of landlord-owned buildings that are leased to operating companies. But since it's a landlord building, in many cases, they're not eligible for the programs offered by. So we collectively, both mayor, council, and development authority, need to make some decisions on if we want to provide some property improvement assistance financially for building owners that lease their buildings. And then Madison and I had a phone call yesterday on a program called the CPACE program. which is, it's already active in about 36 states. Georgia's General Assembly recently approved it here as well. And it's a loan program focusing on renovation or new construction for items like sustainability. What's the term they use?
Resiliency.
Resiliency, roofs, HVAC systems, solar panels, new electrical systems, things like that that go into the sustainability and durability of buildings. I'm not as crazy about that program candidly because I'm not sure it's going to be very useful given some caveats of the program. But it was a good learning experience, and we may, as part of our evaluation, use some of the points of the CPACE program to shape what we. And so with that, we are looking at our incentives, and I've asked Madison to spearhead that project. You want to give us a quick update?
Yeah, so in an effort to make Sandy Springs as competitive to the other local markets as we can, we're kind of doing a comparative data analysis of some of our neighboring cities and counties. So looking at what incentive packages they use, we've done that research online as well as reached out to several local leaders, economic development leaders, to set up meetings to discuss the B&O taxes, building permit and impact fees, as well as the county tax abatements. So just using that to hopefully come forward with some recommendations for council.
I believe the last time we did an incentive assessment was 2017.
Yes, but we did have to work with Georgia Tech,
Right.
which looked at a lot of this, so that gives us a basis.
But it's a good time to evaluate where we are now in incentives and make sure that we continue to be competitive, especially with markets like Dunwoody, Brookhaven, Alpharetta, Roswell, the markets that we probably most frequently compete against. Next on our list is it's important for our role in the department to be liaisons between the city and the development community, talking about projects, brainstorming with them on what they want to do on a particular piece of land, helping them to understand, getting them in touch with our community development folks, with our planners to understand what they can do on sites.
Or council members.
And council members, yeah. We've been on a couple of
At
meetings.
least two.
Yeah, with potential developers on projects. So that's part of that engaging leadership in this process, so that we're working between the developer and the city to help accomplish the goals that meet the mutual goals of both the development community and our community.
Work as a liaison, what type of assistance are you gonna provide them? Developers that work with the small business?
Yeah, so some of it is evaluating, and I'll tell you, Andy and I have had a couple of meetings with companies that already own sites or will soon be acquiring a site.
Fully capable.
Yeah, and
Fully capable.
And of course, a lot of that is identifying who can execute. You've got to understand the financial capacity of the developer, especially in a continuing type market, to determine if someone can actually access the debt and capital to move the project forward. But once you do that, if you know you've got, as Andy says, a fully capable developer, then evaluating, okay, you've got your properties identified under zoning code X, whatever X currently is. And this is more of mayor and council have to make these decisions, but is the potential to expand that zone, change that zoning, alter some things about the site? Do those exist? If someone is looking at greater density or perhaps a different use than what the current property is, what the property is currently zoned for. And then working with our planning department. We were on a call yesterday with two of our senior planners, working with a property owner to help them understand the street grid requirements that are in our code, and how they have to do the street grids to tie in to make it work most effectively on their particular site. This is an old office building site that they want to redevelop, but they need to understand what they can do within the confines of the current codes. And so I think it's being there and accessible and not having the traditional wall that I think government is often viewed as having. You know, it's difficult to get to the decision makers. It's really approaching this from a very much of a, I hate to use the word partnership, but very much that we're partners in this together, because in essence, we want the same things. They need and want a high quality development to make their numbers work and be successful. As a community, we need a development to be successful and desirable. So I think it's how we align our interests to make sure that developers and the city both get.
So sometimes it's, you know, the incentives are what we can give, but sometimes it's a matter of getting out of the way and making sure that, you know, are there obstacles that we can help smooth over? And, you know, and also maybe the entitlements, you know, people are, you know, may have some entitlement needs that have changed, and we need to know about that. I'm not saying we're gonna, you know, hand out zoning entitlement changes willy-nilly, but our goals are to get redevelopment or development happening. We need to find out what it'll take to get it done.
Great gesture. So the two developers or the recipient is free of charge. Is it? They have to. Yeah, in the foreign countries, like South Korea, when foreign corporations coming in, they don't know where to go, and they have government has an office that's called a one-stop shop, just to come in, and then they staff the free service to the local government and the central government. They work it out all that for them. Yeah, all the free service. So that's what's going on. It's a little different, but I think same mindset. Yeah, okay. Good, Jerry.
Yeah, it's bringing a commercial mindset to a governmental agency. The commercial mindset being, we're here in my former life, we went out and pursued clients.
Yeah.
And brought their business in. And that's my goal here with the city is our clients would be our property owners, businesses, bring them into the city. And again, I think in many cases, our interests are aligned. We obviously have codes and zoning ordinances and all those things to work through, but part of our role is help. And most of these developers are very savvy. And they've got very competent assistants around them. And so part of it is just helping them through by understanding what we think they can and can't get done, and what based on historical projects we believe is possible. Same story. Great. And when incentives are appropriate, to outline for them what may be available to them to help entice them to do it. And then finally, part of that is how can we, you all as a development authority, help to accomplish these goals? And are there more things we can do to be part of the solution to accomplishing the kind of development that we see in Sandy Springs? And that is it.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. And you know, for that last bullet point, we've talked for years about, can this authority, you know, because we've got a lot of doers in here and everybody wants to be more proactive and what can we do? But we're kind of limited. You know, we have a statutory mandate of what we can do, but I think the best thing that's happened to this group since I've been around is the addition of Chris Burnett. He is experienced and knowledgeable, and you can tell he's energetic, and we know he knows what we can do. And this is just part of something in your tool belt as you go out and bring in business. But know that you've got a group that is ready to assist. We can put people in meetings whenever you need that. We do have some cash. I don't know how much it is now. Does anybody know that? It's over $100,000. So we because we get fees when we do a deal. We haven't done a deal in a long time, but we don't spend much money either. So we do have the ability to, you know, possibly be a budget source for you, you know, to host maybe a roundtable with developers and, you know, buy everybody lunch or something like that. So we've got some things that we can, that you don't have to go through the city budgeting process to do it. I think this group would embrace the ability to do something like that, to be a part of it and use our, because our name, the development authority sounds like we do more than we actually have the ability to do. And so, but by the same token, that name can be a good thing to, the Sandy Springs Development Authority hosts the 2025 Developer Roundtable or whatever. So we're here for you, but we're glad you're here for us, Chris.
Thank you.
I think we've covered a lot of discussion and Q&A that's been embedded as we go. So unless anybody has anything important to raise, be thinking about some of the things Chris has discussed, and we can raise them at the next meeting. With that, unless there's anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion to adjourn by Mr. Park, second by Mr. Baumann. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion or the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Tasha.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, go.
I don't have your card. You can add this out.
Let me do that.
Send you some information.
Bye, Tasha. Thank you.